All right, Katie Asmuth, it is great to have you on. Welcome to the Single Track Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So we were just talking offline. We'll definitely have to do a longer conversation at some point. But in this one, we're talking about Western States, and I've been following your social media the last couple months. I'm curious, can you talk about the journey to get to the start line this year? Because it sounds like you were nursing some type of injury. So I'm curious, like, what that process looked like, what lessons you took from it, like where you're taking confidence from coming into Western, which is like 10 days away.
It was not a perfect build. But, I don't think anybody has a perfect build, right? So, and I don't think anybody has a perfect race. Well, maybe Beth did last year, and maybe Jim every year. But, besides when he got lost. But I really think it's about how you handle and manage the imperfect build, the imperfect race, how you manage adversity. So I will say, yes, I had an amazing January, February, March, huge build. I was like super pumped to race canyons and was putting up big miles and was just really feeling good. And then started having this nerve niggle. We still haven't gotten imaging because there was such a long wait. And even though I'm a clinician, I was like trying to speed that up. I did everything I could. And essentially all of April, I really decreased my miles. I probably, for 3.5 weeks, decreased substantially. And so, I feel much better now. Occasionally I still feel a little twinge in the back of my hammy, where I'm like, is this a sciatic nerve? Is what's happening? Can I not open my gait up big? But nothing is deterring me. I can run fine. And I wouldn't even say it's pain. It's just kind of noticeable occasionally. But I am glad I'm not running a marathon. I think that would be tough for that gait right now. But, I do think because I have such an amazing coach, I was able to increase back in May, back to my mileage and actually go with a build, higher than I've ever run before. So the last 6 weeks have been really big for me, and I'm tired and ready for taper for sure. And I'm just really excited to start out fresh because it has been quite like an up and down cycle. I was feeling really, really on fire, and then this 3.5 week lull of just trying to get better, and then kind of ramped it up again. So anyways, that's been me, but I'm heading into States feeling confident and ready to, go to the well. So that's where I'm at.
That's awesome. Well, I was watching your post-race interview last year with Brian Powell at I Run Far, and you had a great race. You were as high as second place at one point. You finished in the top 5. By all accounts, that's a fantastic performance. That's an elite performance. But you told Brian that you thought there was still some work to be done. There was places to improve. And so maybe tell us a bit about what happened this past month in May where you hit numbers you hadn't hit before. Were you trying to identify certain areas of improvement to get higher than 5th this year? I'm curious.
Of course, right? That's the reason we race. I hope every racer out there is trying to better themselves. So if you don't finish a race and you're like, oh, I could have done this better, then I guess you had your perfect race. But I think that's really tough to do in 100 miles. So, I absolutely came away from last year with a very long Google Doc and things I would change. And my crew and I got together with, different ways that we could have handled things differently. But to be honest, that race last year I was so stoked all day just to be running Western States. The lore of Western States has been a part of my history as a trail runner, as most of us has, so it's just been, it was just fun to be there. And I feel the same way this year, where you feel like you're running on hallowed ground in the history of the course and you're running with the best in the world. So, I think going into this, I'm a different athlete. I really took this last year. I had just signed with Saucony in April in 2021. So I ran Western States just as a, fresh pro athlete. And this year I really took the pro athlete seriously. I feel like that kind of identity. I actually did strength work, from 4 days a week to 2 days a week. I was very committed. I did all the mobility, especially my spine mobility stuff, starting in April. But it was I handled it differently. I always run with joy and I like to frolic through the forest. But, had a different perspective, and not like a serious one, but I just kind of committed in a different way. And I kind of think of myself more professionally than I used to. And that took time, and that's maybe a different conversation, but definitely strange for me as a mom of two to start running in her like late 20s initially. So it's a very different, path than some people. So anyways, this year has been very different, and the build has been very different, and we'll see how my quads hold up after all the quad strength work. But yeah.
Well, I do want to talk at some point about like further into what that pro athlete lifestyle looks like, because as you probably know, we love talking about that on this show. But what's your biggest motivation heading into this race? Like you just mentioned that, as an athlete, you always want to improve, but when we look at like your numbers from last year, top 5, like at this point, you're fighting for a 1 or 2% gain and improvement. Like that's the nature of being an elite athlete. So I don't know. Is it like a podium or bust, or like winning or bust? Like what's motivating you?
I think it's all about having my best race. And I think when it comes to 100 miles, you can have all the dreams that you want to podium, which of course I do. But I think it's really internal, and there's so much suffering that happens out there, and having that mindset is really key to success out there. And so I would say it's having my best race, really a magical day where you nail your hydration and your fueling and your aid station turnarounds and your electrolytes and all of that. But, I think Western States is so captivating because it's so runnable, but it's elusive because those sneaky hills. And I think it just has that perfect combination of flow and, incorporating grit in there. It's really kind of like the flow and grind, So whereas like hard rock is maybe just a grind the whole way, in Western States, you really can get moving and feel that flow and feel that high. And then it's like, boom, back to grind, So, I think I'll probably try to run with more measured or more with reason instead of emotion, maybe, even though that's how I thrive. It's really running on emotion, but maybe was a little bit just too amped up, for instance, running into Forest Hill, and was just like so excited, that I passed Ragnar DeBots and then was in second place and was like, I got this, I feel amazing, and then later to, of course, like absolutely hit a wall. And so I think I will do some things different. Like the training has been different, like I mentioned, but also I will, everybody says start the race at Forest Hill. I will absolutely not start the race at Forest Hill. I will start the race at Green Gate. And I want to be measured and conservative until then. And then at Green Gate, I want to like hammer it. That's my thinking. I mean, I have to be like in the mix for sure. But that's my thinking. I want to be able to be strong, to Green Gate. And then after Green Gate, just really like try and race it. So that's my thinking.
Well, I think you answered it, but I was just going to ask, like, do you get energy from being one of the runners who's right there at the front of the field with like the top 2 or 3 women, or are you somebody who prefers to stick to whatever game plan you've created pre-race, and no matter what's happening around you, you're just going to like follow that?
At the end, I love to be a part of it for sure. And in the beginning, it's like you're being chill and you're chatting, and I'm like such a chatty person. I'm like stoked on every view, and I really, the highs, the joy of it really drives me. But I will say that I very much have no ego in that regard, in the sense that I let people go ahead if I'm not feeling it. Definitely listen to my body in that way. Or if I'm like, I need to think about myself right now. I need to like be eating. I need to be drinking, So therethere's a lot of time out there, of course, but there's also, you could look at the other way. There's not that much time. Like there's a lot to do in those, 100 miles. So I feel like you kind of have to kind of be within yourself to really master it.
One of the beautiful things about the 100-mile distance is people like to say you live life in a day. You go through all the range of emotions, you suffer, there's extreme joy, etc. So given all that, I'm curious, do you have a mantra for this race? Like when the going gets tough, or you need to bring it back to the level of enjoyment that you brought coming into the race? Like, are you referring to anything?
My favorite that I always use is run when it's fun, walk when it's not. And I think that gives permission to allow myself to power hike when I feel like in a lull. And it's like, because you have the mantra, it's okay. It's not, oh, I feel in a lull, I can't hike up this, or, I can't run up this, and being down on yourself about that. It's almost expected, and knowing that that will happen. I'm not going to run every step of that race, and I know that going in. So that's okay. And I think only Jim does. So that's maybe Tyler, I don't know. Maybe Drew, I'm not sure. Maybe Beth, I'm not sure. The point is I feel like you have to give yourself permission to, like, it's okay, you're going to have the lull and you're going to get out of it, and that's okay. So run when it's fun, walk when it's not. Kind of in the same mentality of slow down to speed up, where, like, gather. I say that a lot to myself, gather. Like, go within, like, what do you need now? Like, scanning the body. I do that constantly, trying to figure out, like, how am I feeling? Where are we now? That sort of thing. I'm, like, always checking in with myself. So, yeah, I feel like, I guess, those are my mantras. Yeah.
Last question on Western States. I'm curious, what does your gear look like for race day? What are you running in? What pack are you using? Shoes?
I can't give away all my secrets, but okay. So I will be wearing, the plan right now is to wear a Saucony Edge. So I run for Saucony. Okay. Love this brand. They are behind me 110%, 20%. They are just so excited for me to race, and also zero pressure, which is fantastic. They're like, you be you, go do you, so, and their trail department is just the best. So I text with them constantly. We're right now dialing in which shoelace is best when you're running through water, that sort of thing. Like, it's just fun. They're just that. Total, like, shoe, geeks too, obviously. So it's been really fun to work with them. And so I'll be running in the Edge, and I'm running with Nathan products. So I have a Nathan vest, like multiple, and we'll be running with Nathan hydration bottles, so to keep cool. Oh, one thing I didn't mention, but I did a lot of dousing of water during the race last year, and probably less hydration that I was drinking and more that I was dousing on myself to keep cool, which is something that we should all be doing, is stay wet, but I need to also be actually drinking it instead of just staying wet on the outside. So that's something that I will change and really dial in this year. And then, I'm wearing ExoSyn socks, wearing, fluid. It will be my hydration of choice. So, yeah, that's what I'll be using.
We have a lot of gear nerds in the audience, so that was a good question for them. The last question I have for you, and I think that you said something really interesting post-race last year. So did Drew Holman. He said something to the same effect. But you said you're not planning on being a visitor to this sport. You're in the community for life. And I thought that was a beautiful sentiment. And I'm curious, what does that look like for you beyond being, one of the best runners in the sport at this time?
I want to race as long as my body and my mind want to race. But I think there's so many other ways to be involved in this sport besides racing, especially like in the most competitive fields. I hope to race into my 70s, I hope to be like throwing myself out there, I hope to be training. But I also know I'm realistic in the sense that I'm a mom of 2 young boys, and I want to make sure that this is always something that's positive for our family. And, as most parents that are listening know, this takes a lot. It takes a lot of physical and mental energy to do this. And my kids and my husband right now are all in and total cheerleaders, but there's always this part of me that's trying to be realistic of, will I ever have to hold back a bit or not to train as hard because I want to be, watching them train and, going to their sports and stuff. So I'm trying to be realistic and wanting to know that I want to be a part of this sport as long as possible. And it might not be in just racing, but hopefully it will be. But I think for me, it's surrounding myself with trail runners always is like the most important part of it, because I think we're a special breed. I think we want to push ourselves out of our comfort zone and, not really have a numb existence. Like, we want to continue to grow and challenge ourselves. And I think that's why I want to be in this sport, and I want to continue to play in the mountains forever. So, I don't know what that entails. I think time will tell. But right now I'm racing. That's my present. And, probably will hopefully mentor parents, especially mothers, into getting into the sport and, maybe be a race director or something. I don't know where my life will go, but I want to be involved. So right now, this is like racing, and we'll see what the future holds.
I think you could be a great podcast host. I think you'd be a good media commentator,
I'm
too.
very curious of people's stories, that's for sure. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'll be in media.
Oh, cool.
Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah. Well, Katie, I want to thank you on a number of levels, but primarily just the enthusiasm and the joy you bring to our sport. I think we're better off for it, so thank you. We're rooting for you on race day, excited to follow your race. We'll link to all your socials in the show notes. Is there anything you want to leave the listeners with before we go?
I think everyone needs to listen to Single Track. I guess if you're listening to this, you are, but you have done such an incredible job. I mean, talk about hype man, right? Thank you, Finn, for all that you've done for our sport. So I'm a huge fan of Single Track Pod. I listen to every single one. So I just wanted to say thank you. I think maybe one thing we could do more often is say thank you to people that mean something to you. So I think if you haven't said thank you to the people that you love, then go say thank you. That would be my takeaway.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And it's a fun time to be in the sport, but looking forward to your race. I guess it's 10 days from now. So thanks for coming on, and we're excited to follow.